Hey everyone! I recently put out a collection of my poems called Reaching Atlas. For quite a few years now, I've wanted to make this video and just discuss what happened in my past regarding the DV situation I was in, and it relates back to the collection of poems that I posted. So trigger warning about this video, it does contain mentions about physical violence and domestic violence. I will put timestamps down below, but I don't suggest that you watch if that's something that might affect you. So before talking about the things that happened with my ex-husband and that DV situation, I'd like to talk about one of my main takeaways. Just because you are aware of traits or tactics that abusive people may engage in, just because you are aware of manipulative and harmful cycles that may exist, it doesn't mean you're exempt from experiencing them. Just because you know about how harmful situations may appear doesn't mean that you can't also fall victim to them. It also doesn't mean that when you come across a similar person in a different situation, that you will necessarily see those red flags immediately. My point is that you'll probably come across these people in different areas of your life. It's not just going to be a romantic situation, so you need to be on your guard. I've personally experienced a handful of situations, whether it be romantic or platonic, in my personal life or in the workplace, where unfortunately I've had to learn these lessons. And you try to see the warning signs in people going forward. But unfortunately, not every manipulative person might look the same. And not every abusive or narcissistic person comes to you in the same way. I hope that you don't come across these people often, but I had to learn to recognize these people going forward and realize that they can appear in different situations. Like I said, be it in your personal or private life, whether it's platonic or romantic, whether it's in person or someone from overseas. Ultimately, when you recognize that toxic person is harmful, you need to get away from them. I think a lot of the times we only look at these situations from a romantic perspective and not necessarily platonic. Another takeaway that I hope you get is that this can absolutely happen with friends or even coworkers. And it can most certainly appear in people that you look up to, whether that's online or in your workplace or at your school. These relationships that you might have with someone where there's an imbalance of power or where they have power over you, it can definitely happen. So let's say there's like a YouTuber or a Twitch creator who has thousands of followers and you really look up to them and suddenly you find yourself messaging them one-on-one. It can be a lot easier for that person to take advantage of that situation and that power imbalance and manipulate you because of your perception of them already being higher as someone you look up to. Or let's say a manager, they're already in a position of power over you. Let's say they always want to call you, so there's no evidence of any text being left. When you start to catch on, like they could be saying one thing to you and different things to other people. It'd be really hard mentally to question their motives, or even realistically, how would you go about reporting them? You might feel a bit intimidated by it. It can be difficult to try to question this person if especially they're already putting you in an isolated situation when they're supposed to be someone that you trust, like a superior who has your best interest in mind. It can be really difficult to move forward as far as like, who do you go to about this person? One common trait that I've personally experienced and seen a lot is that these manipulative people, be it platonic or romantic relationships, will thrive on isolating you. For example, I know of someone who would talk on and on about how beneficial it was for them to not have many friends, to disassociate themselves from their family, and even go so far as to not interact with people in the same sphere as them. So let's say in the workplace, this person might have already started to isolate you, and then they're talking badly about your coworkers. You get caught in that trap of wanting to build rapport with the person who's manipulating you, but you might not be aware of it yet. So you're going to be less inclined to go talk to those other people. You start feeling very connected to this person. You might think that they're telling you deep and meaningful or secretive things, so you might even feel connected to this person and more obligated to them, when the reality is they're just sinking their hooks into you. A creator might say, why are you commenting on this other person's videos? Why are you commenting on their lives? Why are you going to their channel? A creator might say, why are you commenting on this person's videos? Why are you going to their lives? Why are you going to their channel? Because they want to keep you isolated and only with them. I've experienced that these people are so good at what they do, they will start talking negatively about your family, your friends, your job, to enable this perception that they are the only person that you can and should trust. They might even straight up tell you, well, I only trust you, so you should only trust me. I've cut everyone else off, so you should do the same. This is the groundwork that they're laying down. Before you know it, you end up participating in this just to appease them. Engaging and participating in things that, in retrospect, like once you're out of that situation, you realize it was wrong. It's so subtle, and these manipulative people are so good at having you believe that they are harmless and genuine. Another common thing I've noticed is that the verbal abuse can be difficult to recognize from person to person, but almost always, again, it's very subtle. These people build up upon it gradually until it builds up to straight up insults. Ultimately, they're putting you down, which does take a mental toll, because it starts out as comments that are easily disguised as jokes. They could be calling you names and laughing about it, like moron, loser, idiot, bimbo, duffer, saying that you're bad at a certain trait that they could be projecting about. In my experience, they could say that you're bad at communicating, that nothing you say makes sense, that it's always confusing. So then you end up feeling like you have to walk on eggshells around them. Because if there's any miscommunication that potentially leads to an argument or a disagreement, it was most likely your fault. They're setting up the precedents for this. Those insults that were disguised as jokes turn into attacks very quickly when they need to deflect blame. Anything from your personality or hobbies or things that you enjoy can be attacked like this. They'll say it's just jokes, it's playful banter, it's just how their humor is in that culture, it's just their funny personality. It's not, it's just an excuse that they give. Again, in my experience, by this point you've already developed what you feel is a special trust. And they've most likely already been telling you that they have a special trust in you. Unfortunately, it's most likely a very one-sided relationship. You feel this obligation to them, and they've most likely asked a lot of you. Their abusive personality will become more and more bold, especially if you try to call it out. There's either going to be backlash or it's going to be blamed on you. Again, just thinking back to the experiences that I've had, they're probably going to say, well, you're trying to make me feel like a bad person. Or if you're making me upset, you're going to make me get aggressive. And unfortunately, I know firsthand that you can very easily take on this guilt if the curtain isn't lifted to what their true personality is. A lot of the times what I experienced was when I brought these things up, I was told, well, you're just being too sensitive. So that the next time I felt these feelings, I would question myself. When you start to think, hey, this isn't really a fair or loving friendship or relationship, things don't seem right, things don't seem equal, you second guess yourself. I've often felt that this perfect blend of isolation and normalizing this issue of trust and putting you down and just getting their hooks into you. If you ever try to talk about your feelings or issues, it's often dismissed or used against you. Any favor from these toxic people or something that might be considered a compromise is held above your head. Oh, well, look what I did for you. Depending on how deeply involved you are with this person, it can be really hard to leave the situation. They're going to show you little snippets of who they are, little peeks behind that curtain. But it becomes so normalized through these other tactics that it's really, really hard to see the whole picture. At whatever point you do end up pulling back the veil and saying, wow, I can't believe that I've been in this situation. This is horrible. I need to get out. It can be very dangerous and very difficult. You risk a lot of backlash and potential volatility from this person. This might not be true for every experience. Again, I'm just speaking about the situations that I've personally had. But what I've noticed is that there's a reason why these people tend to not have a lot of friends or support group or choose to isolate themselves. They often tend to love adoration for other people or really care a lot about what other people perceive them to be. They really want to have that good image. But the reality is they're not a good person. These people are typically very calculated. They will be calculated with you, your network, your finances, your physical location, your appearance, what you say and who you talk to. And it's possible, again, in my personal experience, they will even try to be really calculated with your assets, making sure that you are taking on debt while they have all the assets. They're going to do everything they can to maintain this power. The question I've come to ask myself time and time again is, are they aware that they are being such an evil, manipulative person? And I recently realized that it really doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, these are the types of people who see their needs above everyone else's. And they are not able to empathize with the needs of other people. So their needs are held above everything and everyone else. So therefore, they will use other people to whatever advantage they need to. This is why one of the other situations that you probably need to prepare yourself for is that when you do end up leaving the situation, they're most likely going to try to twist things and, again, focusing on that public perception, try to make you seem like the bad guy. But you have to just let go. Personally, I found that it's really good to have a support group. Just talk to people, keep your networks. Don't ever let someone isolate you from your friends, from your family, from your support group. You need that safety net. Your wellness, your health, your safety are absolutely the number one priority when getting out of that toxic situation. Sometimes it can be easier to completely cut them off, but other times, again, you have to be a bit more cautious. I know that there are people who are in similar circles of my life that are going through similar situations right now. So I hope that you please remember that you are worthy of love and safety, and you deserve to have a happy and healthy relationship with everyone in your life. And I just want to note that all this talk about like toxic traits and behaviors with people in your life, Sure, there could be things that you might need to work on and grow as a person, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about someone who is taking advantage of you, of your trust and your good heart and your inability to see past their illusion, which they've done a very good job at putting up. Whether they're trying to fulfill some narcissistic need of admiration, or that they feel the need to exert power over you, whatever it is, they're red flags. So now I'm gonna go ahead and discuss what happened with my DV situation. So again, trigger warning, content warning. If you do not want to hear about that, then please click away, and thank you so much for watching. One of the other significant factors that happened with my ex-husband was that it actually was a relationship that started overseas. Basically, we met online, and when you meet online and you try to have this long distance relationship, unfortunately, that can be a major factor in someone trying to isolate you, because there's this time zone difference, and the only way that you can hang out is by being on the phone constantly, and so they're going to pull you away inadvertently from your family and friends. In retrospect, there were a lot of red flags that I didn't see. There was a lot of the things I spoke about earlier, putting me down, insulting my hobbies, my writing, paying me out as jokes. And now I do want to say there's a difference between the Australian humor of paying people out and insulting you as verbal abuse under the guise of jokes. We visited each other a couple times, but not for long. And at this point in time, unfortunately, he did a really good job of convincing me that we had to be together immediately, that we couldn't spend any longer just visiting each other. The visa that I had to come over on, we had to get married. We had to do the visa where you get married within 90 days of landing in the country. Again, in retrospect, I realized this was a fantastic way of isolating me from my family. Even when I landed, I did not have a phone. By the time I got a phone, it was because I voiced this in front of his family, and his dad said, "Oh, I have an old phone that you can have." Teaching me to drive was apparently too much, but after I separated from him, I found out that it was actually very easy for me to drive in Australia and to get my Australian driver's license. So again, just little things that get normalized that you might not realize at the time are ways of maintaining power and control over you. One red flag that I want to make known to others that I didn't recognize at the time was that if someone is physically violent with objects around you, like one of the things that he did was like kick the chair, or if they punch the walls, this is sending you a message. And this is something that I learned whenever I went through domestic violence counseling, that if they are able to physically harm the things around you, then they will harm you. The first time he was physical with me directly, it just seemed like it was out of nowhere, like he had completely snapped. I remember he had punched me straight in the face, straight in my nose, which is something I'm kind of sensitive about because my nose never was the same after this experience. He was punching me, hitting me, and at the same time choking me. I remember my metal glasses at the time had scraped along the front of my nose, and I ran to the bathroom. There was a trail of blood, and I remember he was trying to clean it up immediately. And the sink that I ran to just filled with blood. And at the time I didn't have a phone. This was prior to his dad giving me a phone. And I was just screaming, "I want your sister." I was just saying, "I want to call your sister," because I didn't have anyone. At this point, I didn't have many friends. He just came up to me apologizing, saying no, gave me an ice pack, sat me down on the couch, comforted me as if I was crying for some other reason. And I remember he brought me dinner, curry specifically, just apologized and acted like it was completely normal. And I remember after every one of these incidents, he would buy me jewelry as well. So it was very much like a textbook cycle of abuse. I was constantly on eggshells, or if I spoke up, a disagreement would start. And again, he would snap, absolutely snapped. I remember one time driving to his sister's. It was just like driving on the road. Then all of a sudden, slammed on the brakes, pulled over, grabbed me by my hair, pulled me down. And again, just hitting me, punching me all along my face and my side. That particular day, I hinted to his sister that something was not right. And she looked at me and she was like, "Did he hit you?" And I said, "Yes." And allegedly she went up to him and was like, "Don't you ever do that again." I don't believe that she told his parents or anything. Incidents like this would even happen sometimes in public. We were at the parking garage outside of a movie theater. And again, I just was like, spoke up about something, turned into an argument. I walked off towards his car and he grabbed me by my hair, pulled me back again, choking me, threatening me. It would just escalate extremely quickly. So if you remember in my poetry collection, Reaching Atlas, the poem Foundations was in regards to covering up the bruises that I experienced. That very, very first incident where it was smack bang in my nose and I had my metal glasses on, they had actually scraped along my nose. So I had this very big scar. And I remember going to work and his mom actually stopped by and I said that I slipped and fell in the shower. And she said, "Oh, you duffer, you would do something like that." I distinctly remember whenever it happened inside where we were living, I just would think like, why can't a neighbor hear me? Like I would just say like, please, please, I know we have neighbors. I know someone can hear me. Like surely someone can hear me. Like please someone hear me and call the cops, call someone. That was the one thing that I never, in retrospect, I know it's silly to think or to rely on like a stranger, but that was the one thing that I always was very frustrated with. Like, surely someone can hear this. I know I could hear them. The walls were so thin. And I just never understood why nobody ever made any kind of phone call or anything. I ended up making some more friends, and again that became an issue with the more freedom I had with like taking the train, and I got my own phone because I was getting more money for my job. To this day I'm still friends with those girls and I absolutely credit them for saving my life in this situation. One of them actually worked at a center for victims of domestic violence, and I will never forget, we were doing each other's makeup, getting ready to go out. I will never forget, she looked me straight in the face and she was like, "Oh, he strangles you when he's violent with you?" And I said yes. And very matter of fact, she said, "You need to get out or you're going to die." And I was like, yeah, like, no, that'd be, I don't know why, I don't know what was wrong with me at the time. Again, this mental abuse happens so long. I just feel like mentally you're just so messed up and so screwed up. And she was like, "No, I'm serious." I don't remember the statistic, but she told me that strangulation was one of the biggest predicators for if a woman is going to suffer a fatal incident, if they were going to die in that situation. So I went back and I said, "We need to go to therapy or I'm leaving." So the first therapy session he went to on his own, and he came back to me, and I know he didn't tell the therapist everything that was going on, because he said that the therapist told him that he experiences stress whenever there's change. So I need to work on not stressing him out, and he needs to work on being more accepting of things that are changing. So the next therapy session I went with him, and we sat outside the therapist office, and he grabbed me and looked at me and firmly squeezed me, saying, "If you tell him that I have hit you, then I am going to tell him that you are doing drugs. I am going to tell him everything under the sun so that you get in trouble with immigration, so that you're sent back home." And realistically, there was no issue with me going back home to the States. There was absolutely no issue with that. But he instilled this fear in me that I would be in trouble with the law. And I remember sitting there in that office, just pursing my lips and just smiling through it, not mentioning anything. And when we left, I knew in my heart I had to leave. I had to get out. There was no changing him. There was no fixing him. There was no fixing us. This was not love. From the beginning, it was never love. One of my coworkers had a room that I could rent from her, and I put a bunch of my stuff in trash bags. And unfortunately, there was a lot of stuff that I left behind, a lot of very meaningful things. But at the end of the day, they're just things, so I can't get too worked up about it. But I put my stuff in trash bags in a box, and she came to pick me up, and we left. He tried to figure out, after a long period of time, he would text me asking me where I was. And unfortunately in Australia, you have to prove that you're separated for a certain period of time before you can actually get divorced. During this period, I was going through a lot of learning about what self-love and self-worth actually meant. So the poem Coping Methods relates to that. You know, unfortunately, I did continue to put myself in some sketchy situations, but I'll save those for another video. So after I went to a center for victims of domestic violence in the city, I saw a therapist, I went through counseling, and we ended up going to court for a restraining order. I actually wanted my stuff back, like I wanted my things, because I actually had a place that I was living where I could put the furniture and my stuff that I bought and that I had left there. His response, contesting all of my allegations, was that he did not know that he received this letter until very recently. So he didn't actually contest what was the contents of what I said, just that he wanted more time to get his thoughts together. The judge kind of ripped him a new one and was like, don't you ever come near her, don't you ever lay your hands on another woman, give her stuff back, and that was it. So again, I don't think anything went officially on his record, unfortunately. Of course, in the end, I learned a lot of red flags to look out for, but I think one of the most frustrating things in retrospect was knowing that all this was wrong and that I didn't see it or recognize it sooner. These types of people, while they might not be exactly the same, and the tactics that they use to use you or manipulate you or take advantage of you might not be exactly the same, they are very similar. It's not your fault for getting caught in their trap. But once you realize that you are in that sticky situation, you need to get out and avoid these people further. And I really hope that other people who might be in a similar situation realize that whenever it clicks for you, whenever the veil is lifted, you are in survival mode. You can't fix them. Only they can fix them. And that's if they even realize what they're doing is wrong. It is not your job to lift them up into a good person and, oh, they just need to control their emotions, or, oh, if we're in this type of situation, the bad stuff happens. So as long as we avoid that, then it's fine. No, it's going to happen again and you need to leave. It's not worth it. And please don't be afraid to ask for help. Listen to your loved ones who are trying to give you help. Now is the time for action for you to get out, to get safe, and to start the healing process for yourself. This mental, physical, and emotional abuse can become so normalized, but it's not normal. Please don't let it become so familiar that the potential of something that's unfamiliar seems more scary than the life without someone who's using you or hurting you, again, in any form of relationship. And just again on the international aspect, I know that there's a lot of people who can find love internationally. My parents are a testament to that. My dad met my mom when he was in South America, and they have been in a long-lasting, happy and healthy relationship. But I guess they didn't meet online, so particularly with people online, please be careful. Don't let someone convince you that you need to go and get married or that it's okay for them to move in with you. There are people who are going to try to use you as a ticket out of where they are, using you as a stepping stone or a meal ticket, or will exert control over you to bring you to them and take advantage of that isolation and moving you. So just please be cautious. Don't be afraid to just talk and meet and hang out for a long time. Ultimately, you deserve health and happiness and safety and love. Just please remember your self-worth. I've gone ahead and put some DV hotline numbers down below. Thank you so much for watching. And wherever you're in the world, I hope you're having a beautiful day. Bye.